I'm Dr. Marty Goldstein, and I want you to know I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the air with Dana and Rodney on Dogs Naturally podcast.
Hi, my name is Carlos, and this is Macarena, and we're from Puerto Rico, and we'll be watching On Air with Dogs Naturally.
Hi Dogs Naturally, it's Tina and Polly. We're from Sweden and we're looking forward to listening to Dogs Naturally on air.
Greetings from Denmark, this is Lena and Jessie and Wilma. Love your show.
Hi, Tiffany here from Jerseyville, Ontario. This is my dog Avalanche, and we are super excited to be watching On Air with Dogs Naturally podcast. They're full of information and they're all about educating us on how we can keep our dogs healthy. So make sure you stay tuned. Yahoo!
We should just listen to the whole intro.
I know.
The dog calendar, by the way, too.
Are we ready? Because I don't.
I'm good when you are, man.
It's like talking to my mother.
Kev, if you're listening to this, please introduce us.
Will do, Rodney. He is a pet food nutrition blogger like no other. With thousands of followers on Facebook, he owns the award-winning Planet Paws, a pet food nutrition store with an amazing staff. She is the editor-in-chief of one of the hottest magazines in the world, Dogs Naturally. With over 4 million viewers daily around the world, it's the most complete source of natural healthcare information for dogs. Now let's start the show. With Rodney Abib and Dana Scott, this is On Air with Dogs Naturally.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to all of our viewers out there. We finally, Dana and I, have got our first podcast out. I know everyone's been waiting a very long time. I think, Dana, we were supposed to start this bad boy back in October.
Yeah, we actually announced it. And we really, in all of our naivety, we thought we could get this out in October.
Absolutely. And you know what? Connection is a factor. Sound was a factor. Recording speeds were a factor. How much memory we had in our computers. Upload speed. God knows how many different things that we had to go through. And then finally, just when we had everything figured out, I got sick. We recorded our last podcast, and apparently I was making a stupid face the entire podcast because I couldn't breathe out of my mouth.
I'll pause you two right there. Just how bad was Rodney's face? Well, it was enough for friends to notice and convince us to do it again. All right, back to the show.
So today, hopefully no more stupid faces, Dana, and we can go on with our show.
Let's see. The day's still young. Let's give it a shot, though.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's give some of our listeners and our viewers out there exactly how we got this thing started. I'm just recently leaving a pet podcast called In the Dish, where every week I've had some wonderful doctors and guests onto the show. And actually, my record-setting guest, Miss Dana Scott, when we did our show on vaccines, I remember calling you up, Dana, saying, look, I need somebody to explain to the general public in layman terms how we're going to be able to talk about vaccines and how we're going to engage people. And on that day, we broke the internet. Over 200,000 listeners. It was the biggest show that I've ever done.
Yeah, and I think we hit the target with that show because a few things changed for that day, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. I remember getting those phone calls from some friends who are, maybe I should say veterinary assistants, not getting anybody in trouble, but telling me that the phone lines blew up over there at the clinics. Some actually had to take the phones off of the hook from the impact of the phone calls and the impact of the show we did. And you know, Dane, I found probably the biggest thing and the most challenging for me, and you told me about this. I mean, before on In the Dish, we would do little health tips on like honey and yogurt and things that were fun. But when you do a show on vaccines, sometimes the response you get isn't kind of the ideal response. And for me, I found that, you know, you get a lot of attacks because nobody wants to be told they're doing anything wrong. And yet, you know, you get blasted for bringing up this type of information.
You do, but you know, I'd like to blast people back because here's the thing. I think there's two sides of the camp. On one side, you've got vets who are vaccinating dogs yearly or even every 3 years, and there has never ever been any scientific precedent for doing this. There is zero scientific validity to repeating a vaccine. On the other hand, Dr. Ronald Schultz, who is a
Yeah, who is
he's
Dr. Ronald
yeah.
Schultz? That's the big one.
Yeah. Well, you're going to hear him a lot because people say, oh yeah, you guys must love Dr. Schultz, and we do talk about him a lot, as opposed to other vets, because out of all the thousands and thousands of vets who are giving dogs vaccines, he's one of three who are actually looking at how long vaccines actually last. You'd think that someone at some point would have said, huh, I wonder how long these last, but no, they just keep giving them. So here, Dr. Ronald Schultz in the 70s had that very epiphany. Well, we don't have to repeat vaccinations for humans, so why do we have to do it for animals? Or when animals get, distemper, when they get it naturally and recover from it, then they're protected from distemper for a life. So why don't vaccines confer the same immunity? So he started his research in the 70s, and he found out that, well, yeah, vaccines probably do last for the life of the animal. He's tested all the core vaccines, parvo, distemper, adenovirus, and what he's found is that they're lasting for at least 7 to 15 years. Yeah. And that's not that they're only lasting for 17 or 15 years. This is important to realize. That's the duration of the study. So I think there's really, really clear evidence that vaccines last for the life of the dog, at the very least, a lot longer than 3 years, which is, what a lot of vets consider that a light vaccination schedule. It's not. There's no scientific validity to what they're doing. An annual vaccination, well, that's off the hook. That is so far off the radar of what's scientifically sound that it would be silly. It would be laughable if it wasn't harming dogs and cats.
I think the biggest thing and the most confusing thing for me is that, okay, so here we were vaccinating the pets yearly. And when I had Dr. Jordan onto the show, she was talking about, they got back at some sort of conference somewhere, and they came back and said to themselves, guys, we're causing a ton of cancer here. And there's sarcomas that are developing like in these areas, in these injection sites. Maybe we should cut this thing back and start doing it every 3 years. And so that's one of the biggest things that I find confusing, is that the veterinarian can decide how he wants to give it, whether it's going to be yearly, whether it's going to be every 3 years, or whether not to do it at all. And doesn't that make that confusing on everybody?
I think it confuses the pet owner, but the scary part is that it gives vets complete reign to over vaccinate our pets. So, there's three watchdogs that should really be protecting our pets against over vaccination. The first is the veterinary association. So, Dr. Ronald Schultz in the late 70s started pumping out this research saying vaccines probably last for life. It wasn't until 2003 that the veterinary associations finally said, well, yeah, okay, so we're vaccinating yearly now. How about we do it every 3 years? And it was like that. It was a completely arbitrary number, the 3-year schedule. They figured, yeah, let's go with 3. 3 sounds good to everybody. Great. Let's go along with that. And at the same time, in 2003, this was interesting. What they found was that cats were getting sarcomas at the vaccine sites.
Right.
So they developed a task force and looked into that as well. So all this money, all these sponsorships, all these top researchers and vets looking at this information, and at the end of the study, they said, yeah, it's true. Cats are getting fibrosarcoma at vaccine sites. So what are we going to do about it? I know, let's vaccinate them in their tails, because it's easier to lop them off if they get cancer. Not let's vaccinate less often. Let's do it in the tails. We can just chop those off.
Right. And that's the one that really hit home with me. I remember doing that show with Jamie, my co-host over there and In the Dish. And I miss you, brother. I haven't seen you in a long time. But like our jaws hit the ground when we heard this. And I remember initially, when we did this with Dr. Pat Jordan, she brought all this research into there, and then we brought you back onto the show, and we came back and we hit home with that. And it really caused a lot of issues because first of all, what are my options? And then some of the options could be titering. And I mean, you taught me about that. We went out, I know the bloggers and I, and we drove around the city trying to do some research on titering. And guess what? There is not a lot of places that do titering. And people have no idea what the heck a titer is. in the first place. And I think a lot of folks like this aren't too sure where to go today, because even if you try to go into your groomer, or if you try to go into a daycare, you can't get in. They want yearly vaccines. Some are asking for every 6 months. And so everybody is confused, I find.
It's funny because you mentioned Dr. Pat Jordan. I had a conversation with her last week, and a relative of hers wanted to forego vaccination in her cat. So she asked for a titer, and they charged her $300, which is crazy on two accounts. First of all, Canine Vaxicheck and Symbiotics has a nice product out too. They've got in-house titer tests. The vet just draws a blood, and $30 later, you know within about half an hour whether your dog's protected or not. Like it's great. I don't know why more vets aren't using them, but they're not. I could only assume that vets are vaccinating more often than necessary for financial reasons. Maybe they're not. I don't know. But if they are, then at the very least, why don't they just gouge us for titer tests instead? So if you need that income, that's okay, because vets need to make a living too. So if you need that income, if you need us to come in every year and give you some money, I'd be more than happy to do that. At least with a titer test, the risk is only a poke in the vein, right? And a little bit lighter pocketbook. But the risk with vaccines, as you know, is anywhere from, a big old hard lump on the site to sudden, shock and death, cancer, allergies, the list goes on and on. I'm not here to say that vets shouldn't be making money. What I'm saying is that pet owners should be a little bit smarter about what they're spending their money on. And hopefully if we all start asking for any type of titer testing, not Vaxicheck or any other kind, then maybe vets will start trying to see titers as a source of income instead of vaccines.
So we have our next week, our show will be with one of your BFFs and awesome Dr. Deva Khalsa.
Deva, always entertaining, always fun, and always informative. Really looking forward to talking to Deva next week. And we're going to talk a little bit about parasites and some of the icky things that we do to prevent them.
Right. Yeah. Well, we did this segment when she came on In the Dish. I remember it was a really big segment on fleas and ticks. So, so it's going to be very exciting in the upcoming weeks. And you know what? All these challenges and the hurdles that we've previously had are all gone because we signed a rock star producer and editor who makes this show look awesome. Actually, look who just came in here to say hello. Come on, buddy. You want to say hi? You want to say hello to everybody? Come on out. It's Reg. Reg is here, Dana. He wants to say hey. All right. Thanks, Reg.
Yeah, right, I think he wants to say feed me.
I know, you're ruining the show, Reg. So yeah, where did I leave off with that? So I just want a huge thanks to our rock star editor and producer, Kevin. He did a fabulous job with this, and he's going to be helping us out throughout the future and the way to go.
Yes, and thank you, Kevin, for making us realize how really bad we looked previous to you coming on board. That was really sad. And we really want this podcast to be professional because, I don't know about your audience, Rodney, but the Dogs Naturally audience, they really deserve a really professional podcast. They're great people, and I think you're going to love them.
Hey, man, I'm one of them.
Can a professional podcast still have a blooper reel? Absolutely.
So finally, our first podcast after 10,000 years and 10,000 different attempts. My God, making a podcast is hard. That's where we should start this off. I started the show off complaining, and people are going to be like, oh, this is a great show. This guy's complaining about it. Get my microphone back on.
I love the sound of your old man slippers.
You know what, man? I told you they scuff. I gotta get bigger slippers. So when I started recording this, it said your computer is not capable of recording this in high res, so it's switching to a lower mode. I got like a brand new Mac.
Grandpa slippers. You should hear him in his grandpa slippers. It's hilarious.
Should I if I turn it down?
No,
don't turn it down?
No, I don't.
Okay, we're good. Some of my, the little baby boomers, I shouldn't say baby boomers, I don't know where that came from. Let's maybe edit that out, Kevin. Baby boomers.
Baby boomers.
Where the hell does baby boomers come from? have not saw that, just in case no one, what's that? Call recording warning. This Mac is not running fast enough to record the video from this call. The recording Kevin got me to change something in my settings.
How freaking awesome do I look, though?
Yeah, you know what, you do look incredible.
I know.
I absolutely love those hats, and I hope you both know that I'm going to make you wear them again someday. You heard it earlier from Rodney and Dana. Dr. Deva Khalsa will be joining us on our next podcast. She's pretty awesome. You're not going to want to miss it. And for those who are not familiar with Dr. Schultz's work, we do have show notes. Find them online, dogsnaturallymagazine.com/podcast/1. There you will find the source material Rodney and Dana discussed. We have links and articles waiting for you. You will also find details on how you can be part of the show. Help start our podcast by introducing you and your dog in where you call home. We also want your video questions as well. All of the details are at the link you see below. Don't forget to find us on social media if you haven't yet. Be part of a growing community of passionate dog owners. Until the next podcast, happy barking, everybody.